What's the deal with starting podcasts? It's like starting YouTube channels.
Welcome to What's the Deal with Sam? Starring Sam Lilly. Join Sam as he discusses a wide variety of topics. Now let's start the show.
Thank you. What's the deal with starting podcasts? It's like starting YouTube channels with the ground. There's just... Does every asshole on the planet need to have their own fucking podcast now? Like, I get it, it's an attractive idea. It really is. You see these people making all this content and you're like, shit, I got a voice, I got some thoughts and opinions, I got things I want to say, and I mean, unless, you know, you're mute or something, I guess, in which case, sorry. I guess but luckily you avoid the grouping, the generalization here of being an asshole, so, you know, I mean, that's one of the advantages. Well, silver lining. Even then, I think silver is probably a bit too precious of a metal to be the lining that is that, but you get the point. The thing is, it's like, it's easy, because all you really got to do is record this audio. Nobody has to see you. You can edit this probably whatever fucking way you want. You say stuff, you throw the audio out there, then you have people hopefully find it and listen to it. And even if they don't, I mean, when you're making it, you sort of feel like you're talking to someone. You're throwing it out there. You're talking to the world. You're not just talking into the void. Or at least that's kind of how you have to pitch it to yourself, you know, mentally for the first, you know, however many you do usually, unless you're already, you know, popular from something else. You don't usually start a podcast as a fucking nobody and immediately have tons of people listening to you, unless you're like some weird freak accent that gets viral overnight. I don't know. And, like, I don't have a problem with people starting podcasts, you know, if they have something for the podcast, but what happens so goddamn often is people start a podcast and they don't really have the greatest idea for it. They don't have the greatest concept. I mean, how many goddamn people have started a podcast and they have this, it's a anything goes, free-for-all podcast. We'll talk about any topic. Well, to do that, you gotta be pretty fucking interesting. And, you know, a lot of the people starting these are not. I mean, I'm not saying they're not interesting at all or in certain ways. Maybe they have something to say about some things that's actually really interesting to hear. But nobody's interesting to hear talk about everything. Like, okay, there's probably a very, very minute, tiny, small portion of people on the planet that could talk about any topic and make it sound interesting. Chances are good you're not one of them. I'm not one of them. I can't talk about just fucking everything. I have to put a comedic spin on it with this show, and I also have to put my face in front of it. And sometimes I gotta edit things, so, you know, hopefully it's not a disaster. And even then, it mostly is. Can you imagine just having audio for the entirety of What's the Deal with Sam? Not having the intro and outro bits, and just having me be me talking about things? Can you imagine me talking about things without just spinning it into a joke for everything? Because I can't. Because no one would watch it. No one would watch it. You know? So if you're starting a podcast, maybe you should have a fucking idea in mind. Either have some kind of, like, topic narrowing of, like, I like this topic because I know a lot about this general subject, or I have a lot of passion for it, I have a lot of opinions on this. And, you know, it's not likely you're gonna be this amazing specialist in every field that you can talk about all of these things in depth or have tons of opinions on them, or, you know, at least good and interesting ones. I mean, it would be amazing if you knew all of these things and also were very interesting in the way you said them, but usually people aren't. They're one of them at best, and a lot of times most people are neither of them when they're just doing a podcast about so many fucking topics. I don't know, it's ridiculous, and again, I'm not saying don't start a podcast, I'm not saying they can't be good. I'm saying that if you're doing this, maybe pay a little fucking attention to what you're doing. If nothing else, have an interesting spin on it. Like, we're gonna do this kind of thing where we talk about hats. And so this actor wore this hat. We're gonna do an episode about this actor wearing a hat or something. I don't know. You can do weird shit like that, I guess, to kind of tie it in with your gimmick, your hook, your idea. But, I mean, you have to have some kind of hook to be able to connect to all these things, some kind of thread line, through line, whatever line to talk about these things, or you need to, again, you need to know about the things you're talking about when you're talking about different things, or be really interesting. There's ways. Those are the three main things. Be very informative and well-researched on the topic. Be very interesting with your opinions and how you present them on the topic, or have your own unique spin, gimmick, take, hook, whatever, on multiple different topics. These are the things I would suggest, I would encourage, I would urge you to do if you're going to bother starting a podcast. Also, don't abandon it immediately. That's the thing that also happens. A lot of people start a podcast and they start bitching about problems with it like immediately. And so it's like, it gets maybe a few episodes in and they're like, okay, well, I'm kind of lagging behind now because, the podcast was a really fun idea when I wanted to start it. And now that we've done a few, it's like, well, I don't really feel like doing it anymore. I feel like I got that out of my system. And so I don't have as much motivation. And so when there's any kind of problems, I just don't want to do it. And so the next one happens months, maybe years later. And it's like, no one cares by then. You've been gone for that long. No one's going to just jump all back right in there and feel like nothing. Haven't skipped a beat. No, it's going to be a huge drop in interest entirely, and it's ridiculous. And that's just the thing. That's like I mentioned, it's kind of like with YouTube channels. You can't just start up a podcast and then expect it to be amazing right away and keep working consistently. You got to kind of put some effort into that, and that's why the shitty podcast that I started. I started one. I did. And I don't do it anymore. I did it for a little while. No one listened to it. It was just me. And I began to realize that no one gives a shit about my opinion on that. And I'm not very interested in presenting my opinion on that. And I'm not even really that well researched in doing that. I kind of found out I was pretty shitty at doing a fucking podcast. So I quit. And I axed it and it's gone. I didn't just complain about it that it wasn't working. I stuck with it for a while. And even then, it didn't pan out. So Just think about it when you're going to do a podcast. Don't just jump into it and do it. That's usually not the best way to go about it. Think about it a bit. You could always test the waters, try it out, and then if you don't like it, stop, I suppose. But with the flooding of podcasts that come out nowadays because it's so easy to do and it's such an enticing idea, well, you're just bound to get buried anyways. So you have to kind of want it, you have to kind of try, and just, I don't know. What's the deal with starting podcasts? It's like ending episodes. What's the deal with Sam? 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 What's the deal?